On February 23rd, 1999, the rapper Eminem released an album that would change the world forever. This album was called the Slim Shady LP, which was the birth of hip-hop's greatest villain, Slim Shady. Slim Shady is the alter ego of Eminem, aka Marshall Mathers. Fucking Christ. Slim was created during a time where Eminem was addicted to opioids, and the character basically mirrored the lifestyle that he was headed down. Slim Shady, the character, is very violent, very offensive, and overall very fucking psychotic.
This girl's only 15 years old.
But the creation of Slim Shady essentially allowed Eminem to separate himself from the character, which allowed him to spit rhymes without him worrying about people, you know, reflecting whatever the character is saying back onto the real him. The real Eminem is a family man, someone who went through a childhood full of bullying and abuse. And overall, he's very empathetic to the people that he loves, which was well represented in his recovery era. But the character Slim Shady eventually overshadowed Marshall. I mean, he went on to literally transcend the realm of hip-hop and became one of the most well-known alter egos in rap. But what about when the creator of this character gets old? I mean, Shady was cooler when M was younger. The rebellious and offensive lyrics kind of get old by the time the creator becomes 50 fucking years old. And I mean, that kind of reflected in the reviews of all of his newer albums. The character was getting old. So that's where the death of Slim Shady comes in.
Created me to say everything you didn't.
The death of Slim Shady was released on July 12, 2024, which is the exact day that I'm recording this video. And it's been on repeat ever since the clock hit 12 a.m. This album is a conceptual album, meaning there's an actual storyline. And it actually follows the basic storytelling structure. Track 1 through 5 being the introduction, track 6 to 11 being the rising action, track 12 through 14 being the climax, track 15 through 18 being the falling action, and track 19 being the conclusion. So let's just get straight into the intro. Firstly, to hear Slim Shady immediately break out onto the track Habits and spit the most offensive verse I've heard all year made my little kid heart happy. Eminem was actually the first rapper I ever considered myself a fan of. Regardless of the fact that I was 7, the explicitness of his music really fucking excited me, especially his feature on Roman's Revenge with Nicki Minaj. Currently in the story, Marshall, who's the real Eminem, is tied up by Slim Shady. Slim Shady's goal throughout the album is to effectively get him and Eminem canceled and end their career effectively.
Kinda like what they did to the baby.
With bars such as the fuck? And Slim's doing all of that very effectively. And I've already listened to the album like 3 times by the time I'm recording this, and I'm still finding new witty bars that's making me laugh my ass off. Like the list of shit that Shady makes fun of on this entire album makes it look like a script from South Park, which he ironically samples in this song.
Would this rhyme be okay if South Park did it? Okay.
Shady then disses critics who find a lot of dumbass reasons to hate new albums from legacy acts. He also disses people who get offended at the word retard and midget.
Get back in there, Mario!
He also disses people who care about PC culture. He also disses feminists. He also disses Caitlyn Jenner and essentially the rest of the LGBTQ community. He also disses fat shamers and then the entirety of Gen Z. And by the way, this is all in one song. And then songs like Trouble continue the story as Slim forces Marshall to drink a potion that has Marshall dissing blind people, deaf people, cripples, and fucking Christopher Reeves. And then the track Brand New Dance brings back a 90s style dance track, and essentially the end of the song makes it seem like Marshall is actually just hallucinating Slim Shady coming back. Evil then continues the story by Marshall embodying the energy of Slim. He literally shoots a few poodles at the beginning of the song. With a chorus that's been stuck in my head all day, the verse spits a few more disses at Caitlyn Jenner. You know, the whole idea of the song is that I'm evil, so evil, because Slim Shady's evil. He also comes back to diss Dr. Dre, and then even more special ed people, and then he disses his own mom again. And at this point in the album, M has mentioned paraplegics and famous trans people so many times that it kind of starts to feel a little repetitive. But to me, that's kind of the point. It reintroduces Slim Shady as a character to the audience, but it also kind of highlights how ignorant the character is, you know, 20 years into Eminem's career. This point will be emphasized later, just trust me. On to the rising action. This part of the album begins with an interlude where we're back being held captive by Slim Shady, and he reaffirms M that he's all he's got, referring to the fact that Slim is the entire reason that Eminem is even famous. The song Lucifer begins with Shady rapping. He then raps in the perspective of critics, something the old Slim Shady did a lot in his older music. And then fucking what the fuck? You know, Lucifer is a very self-aware track, making it obvious to the audience that Slim is aware of the criticisms of his character, which then transitions into the track Antichrist, and it essentially highlights that exact same thing. Oh no, Slim Shady's the Antichrist. He's gonna rap about pronouns and Gen Z and gay people. To me, Antichrist essentially parodies that entire sentiment around Eminem. So Slim is giving the audience exactly what they want, an anti-woke album, but in the most absurd way possible. Kind of like an Eminem
Show.
JID on Fuel fucking killed it. To go from rapping on Eminem type beats to being featured on his last album is a hip-hop dream like no other. This song has one of the best lyrics I've heard from M in literal years. Like, listen to this shit. Just to transition into like, and remember how I said the absurdity of the Slim Shady character would be emphasized later? Well, the song Road Rage does exactly that. When I first listened to this song, I think this was the first time in the entire album that I actually started to cringe. He rapped even more bars about Caitlyn Jenner. I think she's been mentioned in every song at this point. More shit about PC culture, and truthfully, a funny bar about Lizzo. And then an entire verse about trans rights. I won't lie, if the beat didn't switch into the hardest shit ever, I would not be putting this on no goddamn playlist. The pronoun lines were funny the first time. The first Caitlyn Jenner bar was funny the first time. Like, I get it. You don't want to fuck a woman who used to be a man. I get it. Trust me. I get it. But fucking Christ. And then it transitions into Houdini, which is a fucking banger. But in terms of the story, it doesn't really need much of an explanation. So with the absurdity of recycled bars, recycled offensive punchlines, and the overall overstayed welcome of the Slim Shady character, this song transitions us into the climax of the entire album. The breaking news skit shows the audience the predicted outrage that this album is probably going to cause. People are boycotting Eminem's music. They're upset and want him banished. And it's essentially exactly what happens to any celebrity with an opinion on the LGBTQ community that isn't just, we agree with everything you do, but it's self-aware. With the news reporter even in the skit saying, and for all we know, Slim did it. He accomplished his goal. He effectively destroyed Eminem's career in the modern day. But Guilty Conscious 2 is where all of that changes. Track 13, Guilty Conscious 2, is probably one of my favorite tracks of the entire album. It's a direct battle of Marshall versus Slim. And then for some reason, story-wise, M is like freed compared to the last time we saw him tied up. Like, I don't even know how that happened, but this is where the real battle begins. Marshall tries being level-headed with Slim. He expresses the hypocrisy of the Slim character literally to Slim. You know, he came from a troubled background of bullying, and Slim Shady has literally become the bully. And then Slim refuses to take any accountability. It actually rages back at people raging at him with lines like, and then with Marshall finally replying with,
Told you we'd get slaughtered for saying retarded.
The battle between Marshall and Slim lasts about 5 minutes, and it's so fucking funny the entire way through. Essentially, all of your potential criticism about Slim's offensive lyrics gets addressed by the man himself, with the verse ending with Eminem rapping, and then with Eminem killing Slim Shady with one final gunshot. Oh, nigga. Sending a final goodbye to every feud Slim Shady got Eminem into, finally killing hip-hop's most notorious villain. The climax ends with the song Head Honcho, which overall is a really good song, but story-wise, I would have preferred if Temporary came right after Guilty Conscious 2. And speaking of Temporary, now, when I first listened to this album, I actually got a little teared up. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the video, I literally grew up off of Eminem. So hearing M make a song dedicated to Haley for when he finally passes away made me really emotional. I mean, she's been a part of the older discography for as long as I can remember. And Skylar Grey's vocals on this song, it just hits deep, man. I could definitely see the song being played at birthday parties for, like, dads to cry to. Like, it's one of those songs that'll probably transcend the entire concept of this album. But it transitions into Bad One, which is a good banger with fire lines such as, which distanced himself from people like Dax and Tom fucking McDonald. Like, thank Christ, bro. But one thing to note about this section of the album is that we're clearly back in the perspective of Marshall. The offensive bars are on the down low for this one, yet the beat itself sounds like something Slim Shady would fucking murder on. It really reiterates the fact that Shady is dead. And of course, M is always gonna slide a couple, you know, funny one-liners in there, like the lyric about Kid Cudi's car blowing up. Thanks, Diddy. But overall, you can tell that the reign of Slim Shady is over, which transitions into the other single for the album, Toby, which features an amazing verse from Babytron and Big Sean and Eminem. Actually, they all just fucking killed the song. And actually, by the time that this song actually plays in the album, it kind of makes the music video make a lot more sense. Like, the visual is Eminem essentially using a chainsaw to cut up Slim Shady's body. I know that sounds gruesome as fuck, but trust me, YouTube, don't fucking ban me. And once you realize that at this point of the album, Slim is actually dead, it actually makes the music video even better for me. But all of this leads into our conclusion of the album. By the Guess Who's Back skit, it seems like Shady isn't actually dead. The interlude calls back to the curtain close skit at the end of the Eminem show, and it does a funny interpolation of Houdini, and Slim actually just seems to just walk away defeated with a gunshot in his head. Whether he makes a return in the future is unknown, but for story's sake, I consider him dead, unless we get a B-side to the album. And then Somebody Save Me is a beautiful outro. Jelly Roll on the chorus really brought all of this together, yet I've never fucking heard of who this guy is. I love him now. With more rapping from the perspective of Marshall, it really feels like a beautiful conclusion to the Slim Shady era. And continuing the theme of what life may look like after Eminem's gone, Somebody Save Me concludes this album very, very nicely.
The real.
The Death of Slim Shady is a great fucking body of work. Definitely top 5 albums of the year, at least from when I'm recording this, and it's the first day the album's been out. The concept was cool as fuck, the production was amazing, and the bars were the best they've been in years, regardless of how repetitive it is. And you know, regardless of that, I can kind of excuse that for the narrative. The story pushes the fact that Slim Shady was once a character that was kind of needed in the 90s. Someone who doesn't give a fuck. But nowadays, the character's old. Eminem's old. Bars don't sound as fresh as they once were back in the day. And it's not like Slim Shady-esque characters don't exist in music today, but that's what the new generation's for. Slim Shady has left such a huge impact on hip-hop that eventually there will be another person that has that same non-caring attitude that is essentially the spiritual successor to that character, as we saw with characters like Wolf Haley from Tyler the Creator. And no, I'm not talking about people like fucking Tom McDonald. These hip-hop alter egos is what I believe makes rap so fucking interesting. I don't look up to these musicians to tell me right from wrong. I want them to use this mic to tell their truth. And whether or not it's something I agree with, the conviction alone will carry a far, far way. And to me, that's the true beauty of hip-hop. And now, ladies, gentlemen, and Caitlyn Jenner, I shall leave you with this lyric. What? Gen Z's trying to what? Cancel Eminem? Gen Z's trying to cancel Eminem. Honey, that's cute.